So how we can achieve this level of loyalty within Unreal Engine with our SpeedTree created vegetation and using the new wind and trees skeletal system, which is introduced in Unreal Engine 5.7. You might say, but there is already a vegetation generator released with this plugin and a bunch of trees and templates provided by Quixel for free. And you're absolutely right. They're stunning. But what if you have a stylized tree or slightly symmetrical tree like in this case, or tangled bush, or you have a hero tree like this pine, for example, or maybe you just have tons of good trees created in SpeedTree and you just want to apply to them the new wind system. So well, it's pretty simple to do. We prepare our tree in SpeedTree. I think this can be done in Blender or Houdini as well. The main thing is to set up the skeleton, and to set up skeleton in SpeedTree, it's so much easy. So first we have to see our bones. We enable them in this menu. Now when it's activated we can see our bones. So we select our trunk and we can see that one bone is already here, not enough. So go to the physics menu and set up the number of the bones, approximately 30-50 bones. That's what I usually do. It depends on the length of the trunk. But why do we need so many bones? Because for swinging it would be enough 5-6. And that's a reasonable question. So let me show you. We have to jump in the Unreal Engine for a moment. Here we have two completely identical trees, but with different number of bones. We can visually see the difference in this hierarchy. In the case of trunk with 4 bones, we see that the bones connection to the descendant branches are quite long. And in the case of a trunk with the larger numbers of the bones, the branch is connected at more levels with shorter connections. So now let's take a look how it's going to work when exposed to wind. For a while it looks okay, with a different speed and minimum amplitude. And as the amplitude increases, the tree with insufficient number of bones begins to rotate, I guess, instead of swinging. So I do not know how it really works, but looks pretty different. Now back to SpeedTree. The trunk is ready and let's move on to the branches. For long massive branches connected directly to the trunk I make 4 or 5 bones. Next level this can be 2, 3, sometimes just 1 bone, depends on the length of the branch. For very small branches or leaves and fronds, we basically don't need to make any bones, need nothing. So the total bone count should not be too much big, between 300 and 700, depend of the size of the tree and quantity of branches, it's enough. Of course, if it's not mother tree from Avatar. So now the bones are ready. Let's export this in FBX format. Settings like here, scale we keep 1 centimeter. No wind. We of course want to keep skeleton and z-axis up, export and wait. When it's done, we go to Unreal Engine. First of all, it's important to enable nanite foliage in the project settings. That's what we're all about. Now we need to enable a couple plugins. It is wind system and procedural vegetation. Okay. Now when it's done, we can import our tree. Import settings we leave like it is. We just make sure that it skeletal mesh with skeleton. Let it make materials and everything else. So click wait. So here is our tree. All the materials are crooked, but we'll fix that later. Now our task is to create a dummy tree. Luckily we already have this procedural vegetation editor installed with our plugin. We just need to enable its visibility that we can have access to it. We check plugin content and engine content, and after we go into the folder engine plugins, procedural vegetation editor content, simple assets, and let's choose Europe and Aspen. We open our procedural vegetation editor. I won't go into details here. You've probably already seen a dozen of videos explaining which node does what, but for our purpose it doesn't matter at all. We just need a skeleton template. In simply we need just this node, which is responsible for foliage distribution. We remove all the foliage, leaving only the structure and the skeleton. So we export it in the same folder where we put our FBX3, name it as you like, and click export. Template is ready. We need to change our mesh inside it. We find import settings, source file. We have to exchange it with our FBX. Apparently it's the same FBX file which we already imported with our tree. So we click re-import mesh with dialog. That is crucial because if you make just re-import mesh, it will re-import your mesh, but it will keep the same skeleton like in our template. And after your wind will not work properly, like you can see here. That's exactly when I pressed the wrong button. So here we find our skeleton. The one was created when we imported our FBX file from SpeedTree, and it will be skeleton for our new skeletal mesh. So we choose it. Here we click OK. Here reset to FBX, and bam, it's done. Now our SpeedTree tree with skeleton working with new wind system. Just couple of tweaks and adjustments. So first let's fix the materials that came with our tree. Let's go into material instances, which was made by Unreal Engine. Here, simply change the blend mode to the pack. Other one, change. And for the leaves, you have to enable two-sided materials here and there. It is still not pretty, but that's what SpeedTree offers. We can leave it as it is, but I prefer to change it to my custom shader because it will look much more better. By the way, if anyone interested, I can make a tutorial on how to create an acceptable shader for vegetation. Okay, much better. So now to the wind. So the skeletal mesh itself won't work in the level because it's not affected by transform provider, but within PCG you can use directly the skeletal mesh. Let's take a look how we do that. Here is a simple PCG graph. We have landscape data, after surface sampler, transform points, density filter, self-pruning, match and set attributes where we plug our massive of our trees, and finally instance can mesh spawner, which go into spawn our skeletal mesh as instances. So just do not forget to choose wind transform provider here. So as we can see, wind is working, all is good, all is fine, seems nice. So now how we do make one tree work with the wind? Create a blueprint, name it BP and temp, open, add instance skinned mesh, assign our tree. Here we add our wind transform provider, of course, and here we add one instance to be able to see our mesh. So here it's a little offset along the z-axis because in SpeedTree the trunk starts from the scanned mesh, not from the ground. Consequently, the first bone is also offset. So we place the tree on the ground how it should be. Now, when our tree is also working and swinging on the wind, and all is good. Let's check all is working like we expected. But sometimes some branches of some trees can be way too much active, like they're eager to fight on Isengard. So here in skeletal mesh, we can change influence by wind on different indexes or different groups. So we are going finding the asset user data, expand it, and here it's influence for each index. I honestly don't really understand which index does what, but through experimentation you can figure out what's what. The only thing is the trunk. Trunk is used for the tall trees, and for the saplings or low plants it's turned off because the wind works physically accurate here, meaning its influence is stronger, higher above the ground, and less influence close to the surface of the ground. So in general, these settings can sometimes help in some cases. Now let's quickly check that the voxelize is working. Type R and 8, view mesh, load base, offset, and put it for. So as we can see, voxelization is working properly for all the meshes. For more convenience, you can enable the plugin console variables, and after in console variables window, you can simply change the values of each console command you already implied in your project. Is much more practical than each time search for the command or type each time command. Here you just tweak the settings and good to go. So and finally, how do we make the amplitude settings accessible? Original global FoliageActor blueprint does not have this option, but it's provided. We just have to turn it on. So we copy the blueprint, is located in the plugins procedural vegetation editor content sample asset materials folder, duplicate it. We never change the original asset that comes with the plugin, otherwise we can break everything. So we all the time make a duplicate. Now we go to the blueprint, double click the function, and then we see that the variable is already exist here, but nothing plugged in. So go to variables, find amplitude, make it, and then get amplitude, plug it in. Compile, save. So we can see we can change our amplitude as long as we can change our wind speed. To change wind direction, simply rotate blueprint by z-axis. So well, that's all. Hope it was as useful to you as it was useful to me, and thanks.